Hotep Senu, Enasenut, E.T., Ren Isha Kandugu Kemet. Hope you're doing well. I want to check the sound first. In the meantime, feel free to let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. That's good enough for me. Great. So, what I will share today is an example of the things that I come across and I feel like sharing. And then, like I said many times, I happen to change my mind. See, if only I was supported as I should be, I would have been able to share so much more. But hey, it is what it is. I don't want it to sound like I'm complaining. But we're going to deal with what is described as the earliest historical record for the Semitic name Yeshua or Yeshu, what we call in English Jesus. So, what you see on the screen, that's only a depiction of an Arab. You have the book, and this is between the first and second century AD. So that's hundreds of years before Prophet Muhammad. So you can have an idea of what they look like. Not much different in comparison to what we can see today in terms of phenotype. So what we're dealing with today is shared by this individual, this PhD, Dr. Bill Manley. The source for what? Get the pen, the pointer. Okay, I have the point here, the pointer there. So this is the source there. Okay. He has a page on the University of Glasgow, that's the United Kingdom. But on the university's website, there's not really much information. Oh, Inspire One, it's been a minute. How you doing? I'm glad to see you. So, and you know what, Inspire One, I thought about you because we spoke of a fair deal about early Christianity, and there's that book, that documentary that you told me about, and there's the book also that I'll eventually go through when I have time. But anyway, on this website there, egyptologyscotland.co.uk, you can go on about, and it will lead you to this URL. So here, Bill Manley. Dr. Bill Manley, honorary president of Egyptology Scotland, is an Egyptologist, university lecturer, museum curator, and best-selling author, best known for devising popular forms of access to the study of ancient Egypt. Bill's books. One moment. There's too much noise in the background. Hold on. Best known for devising popular forms of access to the study of ancient Egypt, Bill's books have been translated into more than 25 languages. For many years, he has taught Egyptology and Coptic at the University of Glasgow, while his publications include standard textbooks for adult learners and university students, such as the Penguin Historical Atlas of Ancient Egypt, How to Read Egyptian Hieroglyphs, with Mark Collier, Egyptian Hieroglyphs for complete beginners, and Egyptian art. His next book, due in 2021, is about ancient philosophy. He has also worked with archaeological surveys in Egypt and Palestine, was a senior curator at National Museum Scotland from 2005 to 2010. He is he is an honorary research fellow at the University of Liverpool and teaches Egyptology occasionally at Complutense University, Madrid. Beale's specialist output has included museum exhibitions and contributions to scholarly publications and encyclopedias on ancient Egyptian and Coptic texts, the history of Egyptology, archaeology of Palestine, and the world's earliest philosophy. And for the record, what you can see right there on this part, that's just the back cover, the last paragraph. And it says, Beale Manley is a curator and lecturer and has taught Egyptology and hieroglyphics, Egyptology and hieroglyphs for more than 20 years at the universities of Glasgow, Liverpool, and Madrid. He is the co-author of the complimentary best-selling volume, How to Read Egyptian Hieroglyphs. So he has taught for more than 20 years. Now that we know about his credentials that can be verified by anyone, let's get to the nitty-gritty. So this is the book. Okay. Page 68. We have this artifact there. Well, it's actually obviously a picture of the stela of Shenwi and Hejret from a tomb at Abydos, 12th dynasty, circa 1900 BC, almost 4,000 years old. Okay. This is located in the Petrie Museum, by the way. I just realizing that I forgot to, but I can show it. It's going to be small, but on page 69, well, you won't be able to read it. But on page 69, it says, the stela of Shenwi and Hejret in the Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology, London. So, the Petrie Museum, London, England. Okay, I've been there. As a matter of fact, I went to look for my archive of pictures that I've taken over there. I just couldn't find it. It would take me quite some time to find it, but I have some pictures from that place. But this is where I met an African American and we made a video. And it's the usual stuff when I go to museums, particularly the Louvre Museum. When I see Black people, they are, for the most part, African Americans or Africans. But the Black French people who live just nearby, the Louvre Museum is really in the center of Paris. You have all those touristic sites, shopping centers, and all that, but they don't care. It is what it is. So, page 69. Here's what the Dr. Beale Manley says. Finally, you may be intrigued to read what seems to be the earliest written record of the name Jesus. Okay? And this is the genealogy. All those names are mentioned in that artifact. Okay? So the artifact is known as the stela of Shenwi and Hejret. So Shenwi is the husband, Hejret is the wife. We even have the parents of Shenwi. His father is called Nacht or Nacht, and his mother is Ibi. Now, for those who take the classes, you surely recognize that we have the root for the word victory and ultimately victorious as well. So, when we look at Shenwi and his genealogy, his descendants, his offsprings, we have his daughter called Ameni or Imeni according to the transliteration. So that lets us know that this name can be used by both a male and a female, because I'm pretty confident that I came across some males with that name. But that being said, we have the grandchildren of Shenwi, Amenemhat or Imenemhat, Mereret, and Yesu. Okay? And this is page 77 of that same book. Dr. Bill Manley said or wrote, "At last you have it, a long inscription, but one you can read, and from it learn much about life and death in ancient Egypt. There is a final point of interest. Among these people are some non-Egyptian names, including the name of Shenwi's wife, Hegeret, which seems to be derived from a Semitic language, such as Canaanite. Of course, her name does not mean she herself was foreign, and her grandchildren have a mix of Egyptian and non-Egyptian names. However, there are many historical records of undoubted foreigners settling in Egypt and pursuing lives among the ruling group. This fact must be set against the biblical image of Egypt under the pharaohs as a land where foreigners were typically enslaved. Instead, another biblical reference stands out on this stela. One of Hegeret's grandson is called Isu, which may be the earliest historical record of the Semitic name Jesus. Hebrew, Ishu or Yeshu, because this is what they call a yod. So if you want to be technical, it's not pronounced, well, some people don't feel like it's pronounced like a E, but like some sort of yeah. For instance, some people who want to pronounce the yod that way, or who want to put the yod instead of the letter E or the letter J, and the letter E, in French is E, the letter I or the letter J, which is transliterated E. The sound is E. If they put the yod, instead of saying Imhotep, they would say Yemhotep. It's just to give you an idea. So there's some observations that I want to make. See, this is taken from my video called Kemet Ma'at, which has more than 378,000 views on YouTube. This is, on this part here, the Median Ptah stela, or the victory stela of Meren Ptah. Some people label it the Israel stela. Supposedly, it is the earliest mention of the name Israel. However, for those who don't know, back in like 2008/2009, I've put up the glyphs with their phonetic values, and my stance is that phonetically it says Israel, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can ask just any Egyptologist of your choice. They don't have to be PhD, as long as they are Egyptologists. Or if you know some people who are familiar with the Medinature, then you can ask them. So, what is spelled phonetically as Israel They are trying to insist that it says Israel. Yet when we have Yeshu, it's quite close, Yeshua. We don't hear about that. Why don't we hear about that? Now, maybe because there is no consensus about that. Because I haven't heard other Egyptologists mentioning that. Personally, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that name being the earliest historical record of the Semitic name Jesus. However, this is what this PhD said. But however, Yeshu, I'm sure everybody would agree, sounds very close to Yeshua. Now, another reason why this might not be mentioned, people are happy to say, well, we have a mention of Israel so long ago, as in to put some legitimacy to the biblical narrative. But how will Christians worldwide feel if they are led to believe or agree or accept the fact that the name of the central figure, the central individual, the central person for Christianity and Catholicism, how would they feel if they get to the notion that the name of their Lord and Savior, and for some, their God, is actually first recorded in Medu? We are told many times that Yeshua is Hebrew. But remember the date of this stela. Whoever is in England can see. When I went there a few years ago, the entry was free of charge. So people can go and see it and take pictures. When I went there, we were not allowed to take footage. We're not allowed to film. I don't know if it has changed. So if people cannot film, they can at least take pictures. The date for this stela is 1900 BC, 1900 BC. What does it mean? Well, you can ask any linguist of your choice. You can put up any university of your choice and ask them, was there any such thing as the Hebrew language 1900 BC? It's problematic. Don't you feel like it's problematic? Now, there's some other thing that I want to mention. He says here that there are many historical records of undoubted foreigners settling in Egypt and pursuing lives among the ruling group. And then Dr. Manley, PhD, said this fact must be set against the biblical image of Egypt under the pharaohs as a land where foreigners were typically enslaved. Another example of a PhD that make a statement that goes in direct contradiction with this tale, with this narrative of the Exodus story. There are plenty other scholars who've made different kinds of statements. Some went as far as saying that the Exodus story is folklore. But I don't know their names by heart. I don't have all their names on the top of my head. But at least here you have one that makes a statement. And he says clearly this fact must be set against the biblical image of Egypt under the pharaohs as a land where foreigners were typically enslaved. Now, there's something else. It's not a critique, it's not a reproach, but I found the sentence particular. We are told instead another biblical reference stands out on this stela. I wouldn't call it a biblical reference because this is 1900 BC. This is 1900 BC. There was no such thing as the Bible. So if something is predating the Bible, we're going to say that this is a biblical reference, but I understand what it means. I understand. That's why I said it's not a critique, it's not a reproach. I just found the wording of that sentence particular. Of course, worldwide, people are more familiar with the Bible than this stela. Bear with me. I have to babysit at the same time. I'm multitasking in this piece. Now, Inspired One wrote, wasn't it common for the rulers of Kemet, which would also have ruled over the land of Canaan, to get slaves and bring them back to Kemet? Well, why would we say that they went to get slaves? Why should we have that hypothesis? Inspired One wrote, once Kemet was overthrown and lost power, didn't some of the Canaanites return back to Canaan? But not millions, but more likely a few hundreds. What is most likely is that when the Hyksos were expelled or chased out, they went back, probably back to Canaan, because I have shown that video, I forgot the title, but maybe it says Hyksos Palestinian descent. And I have shown that inscription or that description from the British Museum, London, England, where it says that the Hyksos they were of Palestinian descent. So it's possible that they returned over there not when Kemet lost power, but when Kemet regained power with the 18th dynasty rulers. But the real deal is that we don't know for sure exactly where they came from. You see, when it comes to Palestine and that time period, particularly when it comes to the relationship between ancient Egypt and the other nations around, the area is really labeled mostly as Syrio-Palestine. There's another thing also that I wanted to touch on. It says there that Shenwi's wife, Hejret, seems to be derived from a Semitic language such as Canaanite. See? It didn't say such as Hebrew, which to me is a hint. I am not a linguist. I am not a PhD. That's why I encourage you to ask known scholars, or even if they are unknown linguists, PhDs, historians. Was there any such thing as the Hebrew language, 1900 BC? Now, Inspired One wrote, it was common to a conquering kingdom, i.e., Canaan, to get the workers to do the task in Kemet. Well, I don't know where you get that from. But I actually have a quote. I actually have a quote. Let me look for it. I don't have just one quote, I have so many. Oh, might not find it. I don't want to mess up my flow. Sexual slaves. Shh. Well, okay. I don't have the quote at hand. I don't have the quote handy. But several scholars have highlighted the fact that the people who did work were not slaves. They were laborers. They were workers who received wages. And we have records of at least one strike. There might have been more. There's a video on YouTube. I don't recall the title. As a matter of fact, about 10 years ago, I shared it. I did upload that part where we are told about someone who did not turn up for work because of a hangover. And as a matter of fact, I think it's on that book. And I will look for it because I think he talks about that document. I even think he shows it. So hold on. Hold on. Chut, 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 chut. Tiens, 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 tiens. Prends ça, prends ça, prends ça. Tiens, tiens, tiens. Voilà. Now, it is indeed that book, Egyptian Hieroglyphs by Richard Parkinson, page 79. Actually, I'm going to start reading from page 77 to 78. Now we share the screen as well. Share. But I'll be back because it's not going to work like that. I cannot be reading and she's in here crying. So I'll be right back. Shh. Okay. I'm back. So I'm going to share the screen and read directly. Well, it's a bit small. There it is. So once again, that's the book, Egyptian Hieroglyphs by Dr. Richard Parkinson. Okay. For those who wonder about his credentials, Dr. Richard Parkinson is an assistant keeper in the Department of Ancient Egypt and Sudan, the British Museum. He is an expert on ancient Egyptian writings and papyri, and all the hieroglyphs in this book were specially drawn by him. So on page 77 and 78 of his book, he talks about the village called Ken Hekepes. I'm sorry, Ken Hekeps. Hekeps. Hekep. It's a bit difficult to read, and it's best to see the glyphs actually. But anyway, that village has been even preserved many short notes. I'm sorry, that village has even preserved many short notes, most of them written on bits of stone from the surrounding hills. One of these notes is a list of who was off work for the work gang in the year 40 of Ramesses II. And the date we have is 1250 BC. We know that one man called Pen-Ub was off one day because his mother was ill, while another called Penduau was off because he was drinking with Kunsu. Their names are written from right to left in a column down to the right, with the dates they were off work. Their excuses are written above in red ink. Red ink is often used to highlight certain words. A papyrus tells how these workers went on strike because they had not received their wages on time. Do you realize what I've just read, brothers and sisters? Name, dates, and places. This is the artifact, brothers and sisters. The color is still visible on this artifact. He told you about the red ink. Now, you might not be able to distinguish it so well because of my small webcam from my laptop, but you have the source there. So not only we are told about workers going on strike because they have not received their wages on time, slaves don't do that. Slaves don't get paid. Slaves don't get any wages. And in assuming that we had a particular society where they had slaves, but they still decided to pay them, I don't think it's heard of. I think it's unheard of that some slaves, whether they are paid or not, will go on strike. So besides workers going on strike, not because the workload was too heavy, not because the work or the labor was too much of a burden, but because they didn't get their paper. I didn't get my bread. I am working today. I'm officially on strike. So we are told about the strike. We are told about Penduau, who was off work because he was drinking. So we have the name of the individual who was off work. We even have the name of the person that he was drinking with. So he didn't turn up for work because he drank too much the day before. And we have Penub, who was of one day because his mother was ill. Have we heard of slaves who don't go to work because their mother, because the mother is ill? I'm not making this up. I didn't write that book. It's a PhD who wrote that book. But our people, we don't hear that type of quotes. We don't hear that type of quotes. You see? Now, we have Asiatic Lion who also called in. So, if I was to make a conclusion regarding this possible earliest mention or earliest record of the name Jesus or Yeshu, as we can see here on the screen. Well, if people want to keep on insisting that the Mer Empata says Israel, well, guess what? Our reflex could be, I'm not saying it must be, I'm not saying it should be, I'm saying it could be. All right, then. The name Jesus derives from the Medina. Isu, or at least let's put it another way, because they might argue it's a Canaanite name. The first attestation, the earliest recorded attestation of that name is in Medunetra, the African language, the African script. How about that? How about that? And of course, for those who did not get the picture, we're not talking about Jesus Christ. We're talking about the given name, Jesus or Yeshua. So I've stated my piece. And if somebody wants to call in, then feel free. If you have any questions or comments, then feel free. And then we can call it a day. As a matter of fact, the live stream has been going on for 40 minutes. I didn't expect to go that long before I invite people to call in. But hey, it was what it was. And I got a little bit disturbed by baby girl. But hey, it is what it is. Many of you know the deal. Many of you know how it is. So what should we do? Should we cut it a day? Does anybody have any question or any statement to make? Feel free. Somebody wants to call in. But if you haven't seen that video called Kimet Ma'at, well, I'm going to share the link. So you can not only watch it, but also share it with whoever you feel would be interested. Because for those of you who like my videos, you need to know that this is the one that I am the most proud of. So I think you will like it as well. I've shared the link in the chat. If some people are interested in taking Medunetter classes, here's the link. That's what's been keeping me quite busy lately. That's why I've been live streaming less than usual. Someone wants to be generous, make a donation via Cash App, I've shared the link. And I'm sharing the link also for the PayPal. Now there's that video called Deception of Asiatic Black Men. I'm about to share it right now in the chat. There it is. Now for those who think that the Semites were black, well, I beg to differ, and I've made a demonstration. The video is called it's called White Semites Black Awakening. But I've shared the link. The link says Semites, they were not black. Go and check it out. Now this one called Shabbat's malediction. Malediction is a French word that means curse. So you can go and have a look and see what's up. If you want to see a hieroglyphic sign list, then here is a link. If you want to call in, I'm sharing the call-in link. Okay, so feel free. What's up? Should we call it a day, brothers and sisters, or should we keep this going? It's up to you. You decide. You know how I get down. I wait a little while, and then when there's no participation, then it's a wrap. B. It doesn't have to last forever. Radio want us call in. What's up, brother?
Yes, peace, brother. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, brother.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I just wanted to call in and because I heard a little bit. I tuned in late, but I heard a little bit with what you were talking about, and and my take is, all of what the elder scholars have been talking about over the past years, such as Dr. Ben, Dr. John Henry Clark, Oshawa Kwezi, they were right on in saying that a lot of the Bible was stolen from Kemet, but you have these guys coming along today trying to make it seem like, that what they were talking about was not true. But at the same time, when they say that, they don't entertain the records, and that's why it is important to show and entertain the sources and records that speaks on this, because when you do that, then there's no denying it. There's a reason why these guys, they sit up there and speak their opinions, such as this guy Chief X. He speak based on his opinions. He never entertains any records or anything, because the records, the sources will shut him down and shut him up. And for those who, and like even these claims made by our elder scholars, sometimes they didn't show records for it, but we know that what they were talking about is true because we did our research and we saw it for ourselves. For example, I want to I don't know I just want to, can I share the screen right quick? I'm going to share the screen right quick.
Of course. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead,
yeah,
brother.
and show you something.
Mhm.
Yeah, let me see here. Okay. Yeah, I won't be long. I'm just going to be brief, but I just want to touch on this point.
And while the brother is, there's the screen. Okay. While the brother is getting his documentation ready, then feel free to hit that like button, that thumbs up. I have 14 thumbs up. Thank you for that. It's a good look.
Okay.
Okay, so feel free, brother Radio One.
Now, yeah, can you see that right there?
Yes, Bible Getaway.
Okay.
Deuteronomy 28.
Yeah, Deuteronomy 28:1. Okay, and it says this. Okay, it says Deuteronomy 28:1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Now it is here saying that Israel will be above all nations of the earth. And as we go get off into the later part of the scriptures, and this is the only time where it is mentioned and credited to another people besides Israel. And let's go here. Okay. This is Ezekiel chapter 29. Okay, we're going to start with verse 14. And it says, and I will bring again the captivity of Egypt, and will cause them to return into the land of Pathros, into the land of their habitation, and they shall be there a base kingdom, and it shall be the basis of kingdoms, neither shall it exalt itself any more above the nations, for I will diminish them that they shall no more rule over the nations. So we can clearly see the parallel where it is crediting the title to Israel that they will be above the nations. But here in Ezekiel, it is saying that the Egyptians were above the nations. And after Deuteronomy, it is no longer credited to Israel, but it is credited to the Egyptians. And also when we go into the, let's go here right quick. Let me see here. I just want to show this right quick. When we go into the Medina, okay? Yes. And it says here, it's gonna be quick. It says right here in wait a minute. I'm gonna find a better one. Let me see here so I can make my point. Okay. Yes. Let's go here. Okay. This is Ancient Records of Egypt, volume 3, in the Annals of Tutmosis, and this is page 264, line 657. Okay, and it says here, where is it? Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, page 263, line 656, and it says, I have given thee might and victory against all countries. I have set thy fame, even the fear of thee, in all lands. Thy terror is as far as the 4 pillars of heaven. I have magnified the dread of thee in all bodies. I have put the warrant of thy majesty among the 9 boughs. The chiefs of all countries are gathered in thy grasp. Okay, so now we see here, according to the ancient records of Egypt, it is saying that the pharaohs or the Netsubitis of the 18th dynasty, they ruled over all countries. Okay, they were the rulers of all countries, and and we go back to Deuteronomy, okay, 21, where it says, okay, and it shall come to pass, if thou hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee to this day, the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Now we just read in the records of Egypt that all countries, that the pharaohs and Netsubitis were rulers of all countries. And it parallels to the Bible verse where it says Israel will be above all nations. So we see the parallel where the Bible stole that from. And I'm going to stop it there. And that is stupid. Yeah, I'm going to stop it there. And yeah, but I just wanted to show that, when you show and entertain these claims, you will start to see the truth, where these stories and where these titles were taken from. And we see it, coming from Kemet, and also, as I was talking on earlier, Israel have no documents, they have no records, they have no cities, they have no empires, no stelas, no writings to prove that they were above all nations. But we see that coming from the Medina in Kemet. That's where it's coming from. And I showed in Ezekiel 29 where it credited to the Egyptians as being above all nations. So why didn't the Bible do that from the beginning? Why didn't the Bible just say, Mizrahim, or the Egyptians, or Pharaoh, were above all nations? So that goes to, that tells you something, that these people were trying to steal the history and glory and culture of Kemet. And some of you may disagree, but hey, it is what it is. If the ancient records of Egypt is saying this and the Bible is saying this, and there's no proof in Israel or Canaan, then I have to go with the fact that, hey, it was stolen. It was stolen from Kemet, and that's why, I choose the name Mizrahim, Pharaoh Mizrahim on my new channel, because Mizrahim or Egypt or Kemet is the real deal. And a lot of our people haven't figured that out yet, but once this Israel doctrine gets exposed for the fakery that it is, then you're gonna have people come running to Kemet, which is already happening. People running to Kemet because they're finding out that Israel can't be proven, and just like Shaka showed the record for Jesus, he entertained it. He did his part by entertaining it. You can disagree with it all you want, but hey, all you have is your theory. You have nothing else to refute it. If you want to refute it, bring something to the table and refute it other than your theory, besides your theory. And it is what it is. The fallacy of this Bible is being exposed. The same Bible that enslaved our ancestors. Change must come. The truth must be told. And we can't let some uneducated know-nothings, some uneducated novices who want to attack our elders. We can't let them get away with their nonsense and their made-up beliefs, because they have their own agenda. Most of these guys who talk that nonsense, it's not about the truth. It's about them. They want to make it about them. Okay? They don't care about the truth. And they have nothing to refute it but their own theories. I'm so sick and tired of hearing these guys' theories. Show some records, show some sources to prove what we're saying is wrong. Other than that, zip it up, zip it, shut up, and accept the truth for what it is. Because all you bring in is theories, and we don't want to hear your theories. We want to hear sources. We want to see your proof. Say you got $1 million. Well, you can say it all you want, but can you prove it? Okay, you may be able to show a receipt or a paper with $1 million on it, but that doesn't mean it's yours. Can you go to the bank and prove that you got $1 million in your account? Can you come with some primary sources to prove what you're talking about? Because without text, without artifacts, and all that good stuff, you have nothing but your theory. And your theory is just as good as a made-up lie. And these guys really actually believe deep down in their heart that their theory means something, and it means nothing. It means nothing. Okay? When you take a test in school and you answer those questions based on your belief and theory, you're going to fail. If you answer those questions based off what you studied and what you know, you're going to pass. That's for fact. And I haven't read this. I know Asiatic said something about Tutmosis didn't subjugate the nations or something like that. Tutmosis didn't subjugate all Levant. He had some trade expeditions. Well, I have to disagree with that because, according to the records, he subjugated more than the Levant. his rule reached as far as the Tigris, Euphrates River. He went beyond the Levant. So I don't know where that's coming from, but you got to read the records to know that. And as far as I'm concerned, he also reached Turkey, or the land of Khita, the Hittites, and that's also beyond the Levant. But yeah, that's an interesting hieroglyphic you showed there. Touching on Jesus, and if that's the case, then that totally destroys this lie or this myth that Jesus was actually a historical figure. It just, something about that story just don't seem right to me. I mean, the historical Jesus is just as, it's almost the same as the biblical Jesus when you look at it. So if you're saying that the historical Jesus existed, then you might as well say the biblical Jesus existed as well. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways.
Brother, regarding Moses, and that's the thing. I make so many notes, but I have one quote. It doesn't mention Moses specifically, Moses or Jehotimus, but it talks about the extent of the control of Kemet. Now, where's the book? It's that book right there. Ancient Egyptian Hieroglyphs, a practical guide by Janice Carmarine, PhD, also. And for the feminists out there, I'm not a fan of feminism, but that's a lady. And it says here on page 86, when Nebetire Amos reached adulthood, he went back on the offensive and succeeded in expelling the Hyksos in about 1550 BC. He is considered the first king of Dynasty 18, a warrior pharaoh who reunited the country and ushered in the new kingdom. Over the next 2 centuries, the native rulers of the Nile expanded their territory to include much of the land to the south, and also conquered many cities to the northeast, including much of Syria, Palestine as vassal states. So when our brother Asiatic Lion says Tutmosis did not subjugate all Levant, now the Levant, that's a large area. I don't think anybody's claiming that we had all the Levant or the control, but here PhD said that Egypt's territory included much of Syria, Palestine. It's not a minor statement. And I'm pretty sure she mentions Thutmose as well. But that's just for the record.
Yeah, and I noticed too, like, a lot of these guys, man, they are afraid to entertain Egypt, because Egypt, is the solid truth.
And I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry to cut you off, but here I want people to read this one here as well. Now, but you see, there it is. Because he was written in it was the transliteration. People would understand. But I knew she was talking about Thutmose. So, same book that I showed you by this lady, PhD. Let me put 150. 150. Is it large enough? Okay. So here we have 79. Okay. So this is page 86. Now, Dr. Janice Cormoran wrote Hatshepsut and her stepson slash nephew Menkepera Jeutimes. Now this is the transliteration. Jeutimes, that's Thutmoses. Thutmoses is the Greek way. Jeutimes, that's Middle Nature. Okay? So whenever you hear Thutmoses, you actually have the name of Thought. The Greeks called him Thought, but our ancestors, or let's say people from the Nile Valley, called him Jehuti, the Netcher, the deity. Okay? So Jehutimes, born of Jehuti, or Jehuti gave birth to him, just like Ramesses. Ramesses, that's via the Greek, but it's actually Ramesu. You see, born of Ra, or Ra gave birth to him. You see, so some people are of the opinion that Mes, which means which has to do with birth, some people are of the opinion that this is somehow the origin or etymology for the name Moses, but that's another story. That's another story. So this PhD says that Jehutimes, who campaigned extensively and expanded the borders of the Egyptian empire to their greatest extent, okay? And on page 87, she wrote, the next king, Nema'at Ra, Amenhotep III, ruler of Thebes, ruled during a period of enormous wealth when Egypt held sway over much of the known world. It's not me, it's this PhD who wrote that Egypt held sway over much of the known world. This is not a minor statement. But go ahead, brother Ready One. Sorry for cutting you off.
Oh that's okay. Yeah. You have to make your point. But yeah, I mean, and also I believe, that Egyptologists are, somewhat biased when it comes to the real boundaries of Egypt. You know, um, it's kind of hard to say, due to the lack of archaeological artifacts outside of Egypt. You know, but we can clearly see in the writings that their boundaries extended very far. You know, and you know, and there will also need to be, you know, a, a scholarly evaluation and examination on this subject. Which I will do soon. When I am able to. But when you just entertain, just entertain the ideal, you would start to see some truth. You may not be convinced, but it will make you think, and it will show you that what they've been saying was wrong all along. And there's this idea, by the archaeologists or in Egyptologists to keep Egypt within Egypt. They don't they don't even want to entertain the boundaries of Egypt and the Egyptian influence on Asia and other parts of Africa, because they have this political pride, or this political nonsense going on, for the benefit of Egypt today. We have to keep Egypt within Egypt at all costs. We don't want anyone else, claiming Egyptian culture. And we can see that that is not the case. You know, even dealing with Sudan or Nubia, we clearly see that the Egyptians, there is without a doubt the Egyptians were settled in the Sudan. but they constantly deny this. Okay, those temples built by the 25th dynasty kings, those were not Kushite temples. There's no resemblance to the Kerma culture. The Kushite kings were not descendants of the Kerma culture. They had more ancestral ties to the 18th dynasty and kings like Tutmosis. I mean, so I would say that they were more likely a mixture of both, but it is wrong to say that they were just Kushite and not Egyptian at all. It is so wrong to say that, because we
Well,
see oh yeah, go ahead.
no, continue. I'm going to wait till you finish then. I can.
Yeah, because
Uh,
we clearly see the Egyptian, you know, the Egyptian influence all in the writings of the 25th dynasty. And in the writings or in the records of the 25th dynasty, nowhere they say that they are Cushites. They never even call their land Cush. They mention Napata, okay, which was founded by Tutmosis III. They make that very clear that they come from Napata, but nothing about Cush, because you have to keep in mind, Cush, the 25th dynasty, was Cush after the 18th dynasty and after the Egyptian influence of Cush. Then came the 25th dynasty. But you can't say dynasty was the same as the Kerma culture, because the Kerma culture was 100% non-Egyptian Cushite. And we clearly see the Egyptian influence in Sudan and Kush, but the Egyptologists constantly want to deny this because they want to deprive the people of Sudan and other parts of Africa from claiming royal ancestral lineage to Egypt. Okay, these fakers, these Europeans, okay, who have nothing to do with Egypt. They want to find some strange and sneaky way to put themselves in. And this is what the main reason why they want to take us out the picture. You know, and I know what these guys are up to. They think they're slick, and like such as the excavations that are being done in today in Sudan today. They're trying to say everything's Kushite, and just deny the Egyptian influence. And it makes no sense. I mean, the writings and the records of the 25th dynasty, it is similar. It is so similar to the writings of the 18th dynasty and 19th dynasty. If you was to read the victory stele of Pianki, its language, everything about it, it's identical to um to the annals of Tutmosis III. I mean, these guys, the 25th dynasty has strong ties to Egypt, probably the strongest ties out of everybody else. Like even the Libyans, when the Libyans came into Egypt, they didn't become Egyptianized until they came into Egypt. And we know that the Egyptians were somewhere in Libya, but you don't see that Egyptian influence in Libya or in Canaan either, like you do in Kush or Sudan. And like Sudan is the closest, like it's the only like second Egypt outside of Egypt. And such as the 22nd dynasty, the Libyan dynasties, those dynasties were in Egypt. They were not outside of Egypt. They were not in Libya. The people in Libya were Libyans. Their culture was Libyan. Was nothing Egyptian about it. They were Libyans. They were what we know as Berbers, non-Egyptian. We can clearly see that. But to deny the Egyptian we see in Sudan, I mean, it's totally wrong. I mean, the Egyptian influence in Sudan was heavy. It was very heavy. And the Egyptologists are trying to deny this, you know, and we know that Sudan, you know, because of its luxury of being on the Nile River, you know, that was the main reason it was settled and influenced by Egyptians, you know, because it was the only like country outside of Egypt that was on the Nile River. You know, the Libyans, they dwelt west, you know, in the west of Egypt, out, you know, outside the Nile. I mean, they didn't live along the Nile River. You know, the Asiatics, the Canaanites, you know, they dwelt to the east. They didn't live along the Nile River. But we clearly see the strong influence in how the Nile River connects Cush and Egypt, you know, and 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 that doesn't take away the fact that Nubians or Cushites from the area of Tasseti, you know, played a major role in being the founders of Egypt. But when we deal with farther south, now we have to keep in mind Napata in that region, Kerma, that's farther south of Tasseti. Tasseti is more to the north of Sudan, that sits in between the first and second cataract of Egypt. But Kerma and Napata, that's further south. And Napata was reached by the Egyptians. So you have the Nubians or the Ethiopians coming from Tasseti and going north, you know, to be the founders of Egypt. But then you have the 18th dynasty Egyptians going south to Napata and also to the land of Punt. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I wish that there was more like archaeological artifacts, you know, and and being the historian that I am, and knowing what I know I even read in the histories of the ancient historians that a lot of these artifacts or steles that mark the boundaries for the Egyptian kings no longer existed. You know, even according to ancient historians that lived 2,500 years ago, they said these boundaries no longer existed. You know, so I mean, but the answer is in the Medina. You know, that's what the ancient records of Egypt are saying. You know, they say they reached the Euphrates. You know, their boundaries went far beyond Egypt. You know, and looking at the artifacts and looking at how powerful their empire was, I mean, how are you going to deny it? You know, I believe it 100%. You know, and I believe that a lot of these steles and artifacts that don't exist no more. You know, because you know a lot of things of the past were destroyed. You know, we're in a whole different time area. You know, we're in the area. You know, first there was the era of Islam coming into Africa. Then you had the early Coptic Christianity, then Islam, then you know another Portuguese 14th century later Christianity came, and a lot was destroyed. You know, including our ways of life. You know, so and a lot of these guys want to say, well, the people in West Africa today, you know, yeah, we don't see no connection to Kemet with them. Well, a lot of those tribes who may have been similar to the people of Kemet no longer exist today. Because you have to keep in mind as well, a lot of West Africans are Christians and Muslims. You know, and they lost that old way of life. You know, so you can't act like you was there back then, you know, to determine which is what, you know. But when we look at the ancient records, we see a different story. Even Kemet, Egypt today, Sudan today, Muslim, Christian. You see no one in Sudan and Kemet today, walking around worshiping Amun-Ra like they did 3,000 years ago. It don't exist. We're in a whole nother time. And you sit up here and say, well, show me the Egyptians or the Cometians in West Africa. And while you sit up there and ask me that, I'll ask you the same. I ask you the question, show me the Cometians and the Cushites in East Africa, in Sudan and Egypt. That way of life died. It died out. We're in a whole nother time. We're in the modern age. So all you have is the records. You can't go against the records and give your own opinion. That is as pseudo as it gets. No, the only thing you're familiar with is what's going on today. I can't talk on what happened 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. I can only talk on what's going on today. I can only tell you about Donald Trump, Barack Obama. I am no authority to talk on, George Washington or people that lived 500 or thousands of years ago. I have to go by the records to get the answers for that. And if you're claiming to be an authority on events that happened thousands of years ago without any records, then you're the worst of the worst, fraud and pseudo. And you should be banned from teaching, because that is as dishonorable as it gets. And you should sit down and shut up and shut your mouth and let the ancients talk and let the record speak for itself. Okay, because too many times a lot of these cult leaders and these big-headed authorities, they want to make it all about them. They make up all these fake stories and these lies. And when you ask them for evidence, they can't show it. Okay, they can't tell you where they got it from, and they can't show it. And if you can't tell me where you got it from, I know you're lying. If you can't show it, at least you can tell me. I mean, at least tell me.
No, brother. Let me just let me just address two comments. Here we have Serapis Christos, who wrote, I don't think it was called Syria or Palestine in those days. Now, just to be clear, and I never claimed that in those days that's how it was called. I'm just saying that when you read books about ancient Egypt, or even if it's not about ancient Egypt, but particularly when it's about Kemet, this is what this area is usually described as. And even on maps, you might see that. But this is, I think I showed a quote earlier, but it's not the first time. Syria, Palestine comes up very often. So that's the way that now they would describe a particular area, because the historians know that it was a certain part of today's Syria and a certain part of today's Palestine or Israel or formerly Canaan. So that's the reason why they have terms like that. Just want to be clear, and I hope that that is clear enough. And another thing here, I'm very surprised at what I'm reading. We have Nico here, who wrote that the Dogon are the Amen priests. And he wrote their god is called Amma, the female version of Amen. I don't see Amma being the female version of Amen. And if you tell me Imenet or Amenet, I would say yes, because most of the time the feminine is denoted with the sound T in Medu Nature. So I would like to know where you get that from, who's claiming that. Then Nico here wrote their language consists of Medu Nature and Hebrew symbols. Now we're talking about the Dogon people's language. Now I don't know it all, but I really doubt that the Dogon language is a mix, or let's say the Dogon writing, because we're talking about Middle Nature and Hebrew symbols. So if we're talking about symbols, then we're talking about script. I really doubt that. Where did you get that from? And well, that last statement, I'm sure a lot of people will agree with that. But some of our people like to say that, Christianity and Islam uh, comes from us, comes from black people. Basically, everything comes from black people. Yes, go ahead, brother. Where do you want?
Yes, and yeah, that's very interesting, and also like you know, I believe West Africa, was strongly connected to Kemet as what we call the land of the dead. Because when people say Kemet, the connection between Kemet and West Africa, that's those terms are somewhat incorrect because it is wrong to say Kemet in West Africa because during the time of Kemet, there was no such thing as West Africa. And I will say the more correct terms will be Kemet and the Amenti because that is what Kemet called the West. And they say that they saw the land of the dead as all the land towards the sunset. And that includes West Africa. The Western Desert in that region. And I will say that West Africa would be considered like the West to the Egyptians because it is the most Western country of all Africa. And
Uh, you, brother, I'm sorry, but you mentioned this thing, and that's interesting. Indeed, some people like to say, well, you guys talk about Kemet, but we're from West Africa. But indeed, during the time of Kemet, there was no such thing as West Africa. And I wonder those people who were like, well, it's not about West Africa, I don't want to hear about it. If you meet someone from South Africa or Zimbabwe, do you tell him, well, I don't want to hear what you're talking about because you're from South Africa and I'm a descendant of West Africans? Will they say that? Would they say any such thing?
mm,
And if they meet people from East Africa, from Ethiopia, from Eritrea, would they say, well, I don't want to hear what you're talking about because I'm from West Africa? Something else
mm,
bothers them. They didn't have a
yeah,
problem with their doctrine coming from Asia. See, those people that have doctrine coming from Asia, those Abrahamic belief
mm,
system, they don't have a problem with that. They don't say, oh, no, no, I don't want to hear that Abrahamic stuff because that's from Asia. I'm from West Africa. Now Asia is cool,
mm,
but East Africa is a problem. Something else bothers them. And
mm,
a lot of time, it's the religion, the religious issue. A lot of time, that's what it is.
yes. And you notice too, it's still called Africa, East Africa. So it's like, if there was no connection between Kemet and West Africa, then why is in East Africa is called Kemet or Kush, and West Africa is only Africa. But you're saying we come from West Africa, but East Africa is called Africa too. So that I mean, why if you're saying that East Africa is Ethiopia and Kush, then why is it it's called East Africa then? You know, I mean, it's just confusion and confusion and manipulation and forgery, confusion of geography and historical timelines. You know, and I was that's interesting that you mentioned the Asiatic and Abrahamic because I was watching a debate and with this guy Garfield. He debated this guy Sharif Bey, and they debated who are we? And I watched that debate, and both of them was being dishonest. Their teachings are very dishonest, and I know they're being dishonest because you don't do that much research and not know the things that I know. You know, because they were debating the topic, who are we? And Garfield, he was entertaining the Moors, okay, and the Arabs and all those people to the north of Africa, but he failed to mention who the people were to the south. He was using the same source that I use, the classical Greek source known as Strabo, which I showed on this video. And he showed the Moors. He showed the Moors who they were, but he failed to show who the people were to the south. Because he knows the people to the south were our true ancestors. And he failed to show that they were called the Ethiopians. He never showed that. He did not entertain that. And on the other side, Sharif Bey, his claim was even worse. He was saying that we were native to America. He was all over the place. He was confused. He was entertaining Strabo. Well, Strabo, yeah, these are the Moors, but at the same time, we the Native Americans. We're indigenous to this land. So why are you entertaining Strabo and the Moors in North Africa if you are indigenous to this land? See, these debates make no sense. Ain't no truth coming out these debates. These guys they're hiding things.
They want to claim Carthage. Some of them like to claim Hannibal. A lot of them try to claim Morocco, and indeed at the same time they want to claim to be indigenous of North America, and some of them would even say South America as well. So they don't really know where they stand, really, and really. Now, even in France, some people are starting to talk about there were no slave ships. Talking about we are not brought to the Americas on slave ships. But when we look at the different Creole languages, we see some remnants of African words. But we don't see remnants of Native American words coming out of this vernacular of the people who were ultimately enslaved. Now, if people say Tainos, Arawak, or even Haiti, and we say Haiti in English, that's where we pronounce it, but it's Haiti. And I read that they gave that name to the land in homage to the indigenous inhabitants. So those are just names of people or place. But we don't have words in different areas when it comes to religion, when it comes to just food and things like that. You see?
Yeah.
And I think really we should find those remnants, really. We should, but we don't. I mean, people say so many stuff. I was told there's a tribe in Africa who I'll leave it there, man, because if I was to just say what people, it's all good. It's all good. It comes down. The bottom line is, and we know it. We've been knowing it for years. They want to claim everything except Africa. They have a huge problem with Africa. They don't want to be associated with Africans. And the funny thing is that there was a documentary, I forgot the exact title, but it might be Black Slaves, Red Masters. But there is a documentary documenting Black people enslaved by Native Americans or American Indians, or however you want to call them. So we have those people, including the Moors. Not only the Moors claim that, we have those people who claim that we're indigenous to America, but here we have different tribes of Native Americans who actually owned black people as slaves.
Mm. Oh man. Mm.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a
Mm.
shame. And in the meantime, like it was documented, once again, I did not write that book, a PhD did. He showed the artifact. And that artifact is actually mentioned on some documentary. I don't have the name of the documentary. There's so many documentaries about ancient Egypt. Anyway, he told
Mm.
us about someone who did not go to work because his mother was sick. Another person who did not go to work because the day before he drank too much with his friend Kunsu. I presume is his friend. We have their names. And we are told about people going on strike because they did not get paid. But because of the religious narratives, because of the Abrahamic belief system, our people feel like the ancient Egyptians enslaved the Hebrews. So the Native Americans who enslaved black people, this is not talked about. We
Mm.
don't hear the most talking about that. But all those Abrahamic believers, they share a narrative that in Kemet, Hebrews were enslaved.
Mm.
That's the world upside down. The people who actually is documented, they enslaved black people, it's not talked about. But the fictional story, the folklore, that's what they are spreading. Why do they keep on spreading it? When we have scholars, we have several historians, several scholars who say, who admit that this is not history,
Mm. And it makes sense.
a negative light on that African kingdom, on that African empire. And our people don't want to be associated with it because the ancient Egyptians are depicted as evil people.
Mm. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It clearly proves that wrong. That and also touching on this where these aboriginals where they say where are the slave ships? You know, well, first of all, there's really no such thing as a slave ship. You know, what you should be asking is where are the ships? You know, because you
They
can
were
use any
reconverted.
ship. Yeah, exactly. You can use any ship and put slaves on it, you know, and they become a slave ship. You know, and a lot of these ships, you know, a lot of these ships don't exist no more because it was so long. You know,
And
it's like saying like, oh yeah, yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
glad you're saying that, brother. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I'm so glad you said that because try to tell people that and there was this COVID situation. I'm planning on going to so many museums, and I wasn't really planning on going to slavery museums, but I will do that eventually. We might see what they have left. But you are correct to say that. Even when it comes to cars, how many cars do we see that are like 100 years old, something like that, unless it's a collection car? Now, something that's like 3,400 years old, they want us to show it, and it's made out of wood. And the cars, you have steel, you have iron, you have all this kind of solid thing that even rusted and went bad, and they took some parts to use it for other things. They scrapped some parts so it will be reused. And it's like the World Trade Center.
Mm.
The remains were taken away to be melted or reused or recycled, so to speak, for lack of better word. And it's like me saying, well, show me the proof, the remains of the World Trade Center. This is a hoax. It never existed.
Mm. Yeah.
But
Mm.
our people will try anything. They will try anything. I mean, when I say our people, it's not all, but those people, yes, indeed.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and and they cannot show us the boats that brought the Europeans over because they want to
Yes.
act like, okay,
Yes.
we were not brought over on slave ships were there already. Okay, how did the Europeans get there? Were the Europeans there as well? How did they get there?
Exactly.
Well, you know
Yeah,
what they might
because
say. Well, they got there, but they did not enslave us. Or I mean, they might say they enslaved us, but we were already there. I mean, it's
right.
like the world upside down. And at the end of the day, which historian says the same thing that they are saying?
Yeah, good point. Oh man, great point. Yeah,
You,
because
you have
yeah,
the you, you know you have the black code during the
mm,
time where you have this, those French kings. I can't remember if it was Louis the 14th that was the ruler at the time, and they made a whole code, a codification of the ownership of black people who more or less
mm,
had the same status as furnitures. Now, the
yes,
slavery for France, it was not really inland in the main French territory. It was in the colonies. It was in the West Indies or the
mm,
Caribbeans. So why would they make that code?
mm,
I mean, we have records, bills of sales.
mm,
Now, the NOA, the Nation of Islam, they have those books talking about the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. There's two
yes,
volumes.
mm,
I don't know if they made a third one. I think they might have came up with a book called Jews Sending Blacks, but maybe this is an excerpt from one of those two books or a compilation of one of those two books. But doesn't mean that the research department of the Nation of Islam didn't know what they were talking about.
mm,
We have names of slave ships. We have names of owners. And now check this out.
mm,
In America, you have those that bank Chase and JP Morgan. I've read so many times that they played a part during the slave trade. And they decided to come up with some programs in order to help African Americans. Because, of course,
mm,
they're not going to make some sort of calculation and say, okay, we came up to the conclusion that because of the prejudice, you should have that much money each. They will lose too much money.
mm,
But how come
yeah,
even those banks who are worth hundreds of millions, probably, maybe a
mm,
few billions, how come themselves they admit that they played a part in the slave trade? They don't know what they are
mm,
talking about. So
mm,
they're going to accuse themselves of something that they have not done or they have not played a part in as an institution.
good point.
But I'm
Mm.
sorry about this. Just go ahead, brother. I'm sorry about this.
Yeah, that's a good point because why would they admit to something they played a part in something that never happened? Yeah, I mean,
And it's such a bad look, I mean,
yeah,
it's something that you can respect when someone admits that he was wrong and he wants to make an effort to repair or to compensate. That can be admirable if the effort is really made. But as a
yes,
bank, as a group, as an institution, it's not something glorious. It's not a good look, as we say today.
mm,
There's another documentary. It's about England,
yeah,
and we
mm,
have the descendants of people who were involved in the slave trade, and they are making
mm,
testimony. They're talking about the great grandfather's involvement, particularly Bristol, the city called Bristol in England. At one point, it
mm,
was like the main port. Just like at one point, the city called Nantes in France was one of the main port. So those
mm,
descendants of slave owners or slave ships owners or people who are involved with iron or different tools that were being used back then, they're going to own up to what their ancestors did,
mm,
and it's factual. I'm sorry, it's fictional. It doesn't even make
mm,
sense. But
yeah,
we have some
mm,
dudes. We have some dudes. I mean, I don't know where they get that from. There's no documentation to support what they're saying. No historians support what they're saying.
mm,
no university support what they're saying. I don't think we really have PhDs who support what they're saying, but we're supposed to believe them just because they said so.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Let me
also,
let, let, yeah, go ahead, and then we're gonna let our brother Afroasiatic speak.
also,
Yes.
I want to touch on like the fact about the fall of Egypt. You know, now when it comes to the fall of Egypt, okay, that's why the historian is so important, because the historian tells the story, tells the truth, no matter what, be it good or bad. Now, some of these guys in the Kemetic community will say that, the Egyptians never left Egypt, and the Egyptians never mentioned their fall, and because the Egyptians never mention it, or we can't find it in the Meta, then we're gonna have to go with that. The Egyptians never went nowhere, and Egypt never failed. That's what they're saying pretty much. But we know for a fact that the Egyptians never never recorded their defeats or their downfalls. So it is silly to seek answers for the fall of Egypt within the Medu in Egypt, because you're not going to find it. It makes no sense. They only recorded their victories and their glories, for the most part. And but for their downfall and for their defeats, it makes sense to go to other sources, and that's where you will find the answers to that question. In other sources such as the annals, the ancient records of Assyria, the Hebrew Bible, and it makes sense to Hebrews to record the downfall of Egypt, because they were bitter enemies of Egypt, and also the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, they recorded the downfall of Egypt because it's coming from a different source. So another source have no problem recording the downfall of Egypt, because you know they they are another culture. So, and when it comes to the historian, the historian, it is the job for the historian to tell the truth no matter what. To tell the victory of that nation, the defeat of that nation, no matter what. Even if that nation don't record their own defeats, the historian is there to tell the truth no matter what. And that's why, in the Bible, like for example, the book of Ezekiel, chapter 29, talks the most about the fall of Egypt in the Bible. And a lot of people will take this as prophecy, but, you know, uh, and some will say that this is a prophecy that never happened. And those who say that do not know what the hell they're talking about. Because first of all, it's not a prophecy. Because the date that the Bible was written dates much after the fall of Egypt. So it is actually a historical event that already happened. That's why the Bible speaks so well on it, because it already happened. It's not prophecy. It already happened. And that's why the book of Ezekiel, say that, the Egypt was attacked, was wasted, became ruins. The temples, the gods of Egypt got destroyed. And the Bible confused it with Nebuchadnezzar. But actually, it was the Assyrians who came before Nebuchadnezzar that brought about this downfall of Egypt. Okay, then after that, it was the Persians. But the event Ezekiel was speaking on was already it already happened, um, due to the Assyrians. The Assyrians invaded Egypt and destroyed Egypt, and Ezekiel tried to make it seem as it happened during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, but it was a historical event that already happened by the Assyrians. And that's why when you entertain it, you have to be honest about it, and draw the parallels. Which I will do later on. I'm going to entertain it, and which I already have, but I'm going to entertain it some more because it's very interesting. It shows that it parallels with what the Syrian records are saying about the fall of Egypt. And a lot of these other guys, they don't want to entertain it because they don't want the truth to come out. Okay, such as this guy Garfield, who had this debate, clearly saying, "Who are we?" Well, our people will never know who we are because you keep lying. Okay, these Negroes are constantly lying. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying.
All right,
And that's
brother.
why we saw.
Hold that thought, please. Let me just welcome Asiatic Line. Brother, feel free to speak.
Hotep, brother Shaka, Hotep Radio 1.
Hotep, brother.
Hotep, brother.
You've been waiting
Yeah,
for a long time.
Nah, it's cool. I was driving anyway. I had to pull over, Peace to the brothers, man. You familiar with a PhD, brother Shaka, by the name of Bernard Lehman?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, well, Bernard Lehman is a PhD, and he done some work on the back migration out of course, the Levant and Arabia into Dumont. But that's his name. He's a PhD, Bernard Lehman, just the name, one, because I know y'all brothers like PhD type of discussions. But he goes through Dumont, and he points to more of a South Arabian re-entry route for Africans coming out of the Arabian Peninsula. That's his line of reasoning. We understand that there are two exit routes, either via South Arabia or the Levantine corridor. But he points out the re-entry route about 3,000 years ago into Dumont and Aksum. And he documents that pretty well, with stone, which I know that brother Radio 1 appreciates. Actually, incense burners in Dumont that have the South Arabian Musnad, but it's written in Musnad, but it's Musnad script, but more of a Hebrew or Canaanite language. And he documents that. That's one PhD.
Okay, is it the one who wrote that book about the Queen of Sheba and biblical scholarship?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
That is some good material, from my perspective, of course.
Okay.
You know,
And what is he saying that that agrees
well,
with your claims?
he's saying pretty much that there is a Hebrew or Israelite back migration 3,000 years ago back into the Horn of Africa, in particular into Eritrea, Dumont. But he talks about some other populations in the area, but the focus is mostly on Dumont, and he utilizes the stone incense burners in Adi Kawi, and he reckons it to actual proof of the Queen of Sheba, at least a migration that fits her narrative. And he particularly zeroes in what I like. He particularly zeroes in on, in the Kibra Nagas, the Sheba cycle. He separates the Sheba cycle of the Kibra Nagas from it's another cycle, and harps on the authenticity of the Sheba cycle in the Kibra Nagas and how it's older than the rest of the Kibra Nagas. I have the Kibra Nagas, but it's at home, and I'm out driving right now. Well, I'm pulled over, but yeah.
But you mentioned proof for the Queen of Sheba. Queen of Sheba, that's not historical.
Well, according to this gentleman, Bernard Lieberman, he is demonstrating, to the best of his ability, from what I've seen, that those events were actual historical events. He's connected to migration. Of course, we have genetic data that supports it, but that's on my separate research. But I'm just speaking from Dr. Lieberman's thesis.
I'm a bit confused, brother. You're saying that you have there's some genetic evidence that supports the Queen of Sheba?
No, I'm saying there's genetic evidence that supports his thesis that there, in fact, was a back migration out of the Arabian Peninsula into the Horn of Africa. There is genetic data that supports his thesis, but that is from separate sources other than Bernard Lehman that I'm mentioning now.
I wouldn't be surprised if we find some, I don't want to use the word correlation, but if we find some traces when it comes to genetics or DNA, because Arabia at one point was under the authority, not to say control, of Ethiopia, or some might say the empire or kingdom of Aksum. So since they had some authority over Arabia, I wouldn't be surprised that there will be some sort of mixing somehow, some way. So to find some closeness with the DNA in the populations of Arabia and Ethiopia, that would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense. But I don't want to go too far into the discussion, and go too deep into it. But that thesis that you just put forth, it actually it does make sense as well. But I would say it runs much deeper than just Oxum. When you get into the genetic data, which I'm very much into, and I believe it's used, it's pretty viable in the court system, is viable for paternity of children. So in my opinion, I warrant that it is you know pretty good tool, that could be used today as well. But in the genetic data, yeah, the markers are far too old to have been there from just oxen. They're very old markers. I don't want to go into those numbers, but just to stick with his research, with he's doing it based on the stonework that's coming
But,
across the Red Sea.
but I would like to ask you, when you talk about back migration, are you saying that Africans left the continent, went wherever they went, and when they returned to Africa, they returned via or through Arabia? Or are you saying that people were in Arabia and they moved to Africa and populate and build those civilizations like Kemet, like you like to mention the Anu people and all that? Is it the
Oh,
first option or the second option?
well, Shaka, I'm not a nutcase, brother. So I know that we came out of Africa, of course. But that migration is well, evidence of it is documented at least 100,000 years ago. But the back migration, they say within the data, they state that it started about 50,000, about about 50,000 years ago. The back migration began into the Horn, and that's pretty prevalent in the genetic data. And I got a source on that. I mean, it's a bunch of sources on that right there about the back migration coming back in. But Shaka, I'm not into that saying that everything came out of a. I'm just talking about a specific cultural markers, specific cultural markers, in my opinion, that are African. Not only their cultural markers, but the genetic markers as well.
Okay, well, I'm going to let Radio 1 state his piece. and make his closing remarks, and then I'm going to let Asiatic Lion make his closing remarks. So feel free, Brother Radio One.
Oh yes, yes. I just want to, because this is very important. I mean, okay, if you don't believe in the Bible, in history, just take yourself out of the picture. Don't have just say you don't believe in it, and and don't and really don't even entertain it. You know, but I'm saying, if you do believe in this, if you do believe in the Bible and history, claim the right people. We have the Hebrew Israelites telling our people lies, and the Moors telling our people lies, and they're claiming the wrong people. You're claiming the non-Africans in the Bible. If you're going to claim the people in the Bible, at least claim the Africans. And you have these guys on the other side who are constantly lying, but at the same time, you find out that they don't even believe in it, and that's why they're lying. If you don't believe in it, just say you don't believe in it. Don't entertain a subject and lie about it, because you have some disbelief in it. So it's like, it's lies and fallacies going on both sides. And it's like, I feel like I stand alone in this, in this connecting Egypt to African Americans concept, because it's like everybody else, they're on some other stuff. Yeah, everybody trying to claim it's like Egypt, Kemet don't even exist. I mean, it's only West Africans, Sub-Saharan Africans, and these Asiatics. you know, I mean, it's crazy, man. It's like nobody's telling the truth. You know,
And brother, I would like to say just briefly, people don't necessarily have to believe or know or claim to be descendant from a particular location in order to follow a culture. Like, for a very long time, we followed belief systems that we don't have any part in when it comes to the creation of it. And like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, until at some point, some of our elders they started talking that, oh, it was us, the Bible's talking about us and blah blah blah. But I don't feel like, okay, if you want to follow Kemet, then you have to be a descendant, or it's only fair or justifiable for you to follow Kemet or feel like you're commissioned, like some people say, or to practice Mal'at or follow Ma'at, then you have to be, people have the right to choose. Some people decide to be Buddhist, some people decide to be atheist, some people decide to follow Native American religion. It's just a matter of choice, what for whatever reason people choose, and that's all I wanted to say. That's my stance. Like, you don't have to be able to demonstrate, okay, I'm a descendant of Ramesses II and I'm legitimate in following Kemet. No. Even if you take a DNA test, it says you're from South Africa or you're from Senegal or Mali, nothing is stopping you from following a traditional African way of life.
yeah, exactly. And when it comes to Kemet, being a descendant of Kemet, you also have to ask the questions: who are the descendants of Kemet? Because if you go by the Bible, we clearly see that the descendants of the ancient Egyptians scattered throughout the other parts of Africa. So they were scattered and dispersed throughout the desolate desert lands of the Western Sahara. That's what it's talking about. And if someone just entertain it, then people will start to see, and
But that's the Bible. That's the Bible. We don't even need to follow a theological
That's
book.
true, too.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
It's true according to who? Because
No,
the
I
thing is
said
that. Mhm.
No,
Go
I was
ahead.
just saying that I agree with Radio One that the populations that were in Kemet, many populations were dispersed into the Sahel. Yeah, I agree with that thesis right there. You know,
And
to the
indeed
south and into the Sahel.
and
Go ahead.
indeed there's that PDF from different PhDs that I've shared many times. And for those who don't know, the video is called something like West Africa relationship with Kemet, or Kemet relationship with West Africa. I've put the link there. It's hosted on the website Onc Online, and the director is Theophado Benga, Dr. Theophado Benga, PhD, the one who went with Cheikh Anta Diop in 1974 in order to argue the blackness of the ancient Egyptian. He's a linguist, he's a historian, he's a giant. So he's the one who's hosting that website, and on that website is that PDF with where several PhDs have shown the similarities between the Meta and different African languages, including West African languages.
Mm.
And Wolof has been the most impressive comparison done by Diop, but once again, it's probably not in the English version of his book, but in the French version. For those who know a little bit of French, or those who know French, period, Nation d'Agriculture, a very thick book. It has shown in terms of grammar how the Meta Nature is very close to the Wolof, and Wolof, that's Senegal, and Senegal, that's West Africa. But those who try to put some barrier or boundary between West Africa and Kemet, they probably don't know about that. It's just easy to make
Yes.
claims, but when we dig into things, you know, but maybe people don't pay attention to that because they are African PhDs. It's a
That is
possibility because
that
some
is
of our
Yes.
correct.
people, yeah, some of our people they feel like okay, that's it's a black PhD. It's a and this. I mean, it's sad, but some people have an elitist mentality. So you have some people who will feel like uh, black American PhDs are probably more valuable than an African PhD. I mean, there's some issues that are sensitive to talk about, but I had to deal with that at some point with some people that I was affiliated with. It was like, oh, that brother is from France. Why is he interested in our affairs? Blah blah blah. I mean, I've heard it all. But long story short, maybe because they are African PhDs and people don't pay them no mind. But at the end of the day, who's refuting them?
Yes.
Who's
Mm.
refuting those PhDs with the demonstration that they have made, the linguistic demonstrations that they have made?
Actually, Shaka, just to add on, there's a linguist, I believe the brother passed away. He might have been Yoruba or Nigerian, Oyiyo or Oyoyi. I believe it's Oyiyo. And he actually broke down the book of Genesis, I believe maybe the first 11 verses, but he approached it from Berber, Tamashek, Yoruba, still within the Afro-Asiatic language system and family. But, he had a interesting interpretation of things when he went into more of a African, I guess you could say, Africa proper centered Afro-Asiatic perspective of the language and the book of Genesis. And it makes it just makes the text look a bit different from that point of view. Actually, a lot different when we look at it from an African centered, even in the Afro-Asiatic language. But it's just the African conceptualization. It's in my opinion, when we look at those African languages like Tamashek, Hausa, Yoruba, we get a more of a African conceptualization, in my opinion, and it alters the perspective of those verses of the Book of Genesis. Oyiyo
Yeah.
Mm,
or Oyoyi was his name.
Mm.
okay.
Mm.
Yes, go
Sons
ahead,
of
brother Radio.
sons of God and daughters of men is the name of the text.
Mm.
Really good
Oh,
text.
okay. Go ahead, brother Radio One. Sorry, I've cut you
Yeah,
off.
I'm gonna close out, but when it comes to that, you have to That's why a lot of these guys that speak on this subject, you know, they know nothing. You know, I mean, you have to know the geography of Egypt. You know, you have, when you ask the question, what direction is West Africa from Egypt? You know, and when you look on the map, you clearly see that it's west of Egypt. It's so far to the west of Africa, it is west of Egypt. It's not south of Egypt. You know, Sudan is south of Egypt. It's not southwest of Egypt. You know, the area of Chad and that area, that is southwest of Egypt. But West Africa is so far to the west, you know, you have to make the conclusion that it is west of Egypt. And we know that according to the Egyptians, they were in the oasis, which is west of Egypt. The oasis is not on the Nile River. You
That's
know,
critical.
the oasis, yeah, the oasis is hundreds of miles away from the Nile River. You know, and there is definitely a connection there. And like
We
when I
gotta
when I get
build
into,
on. We gotta build on that Radio One on the Bubastis dynasty. I ain't mean to cut you
yeah,
off. I just wanted to put it in the air. We got to build on the Bubas dynasty one day.
oh
22nd
yeah,
dynasty.
yeah, yes, I'm familiar with that, somewhat familiar with that dynasty as well. But yeah, you know, yeah, I mean, when you look at the geography, you know, you clearly see that, you know, there's connection, you know, because it's it's so far to the west that you have to say West Africa is west of Egypt, you know. And when I get into the Bible, you know, as an African, you know, I don't care about Israel. I'm not looking for Israel, you know. I mean, when I, you know, because I'm looking for Egypt. I'm going to entertain what happened to Egypt, you know, because that's in Africa. You know, you have these Israelites, you know, they only want to focus on Israel, Israel, Israel. What happened to Israel? You know, but nobody is entertaining what happened to the Egyptians, what happened to Egypt. You know, that is a subject that's being ignored. You know, and it's like, you know, Africans and Black Americans, you know, they're bypassing and rejecting and ignoring their true ancestors, even in the Bible. You know, if you're going to entertain the Bible, you know, look for your ancestors in the Bible. You know, if kids get lost and like something happened in the crowd and a mother's looking for their child, you know, they're looking for their child. You know, they're not really concerned with other children, but they looking for their child. You know, so when you get into the Bible, you know, look for your ancestors. You know, why you trying to be somebody else? You got the Moors, they want to be the Moabites. The Israelites, they want to be the Israelites. You know, I mean, everybody but their ancestors in the Bible. And it's like you want to sell out your identity and credit your ancestors to somebody else, and at the same time, you know, take on the identity of a foreign people, of a non-African people. You know, and it's ridiculous, you know. And I'm going to entertain this subject. I'm going to get off into every record on what happened to the Egyptians. So if you want the truth, and you're looking for someone who's going to entertain this subject, then come to my channel. You know, come to my channel, Radio One, and Pharaoh Mitzrayim. You know, I'm going to entertain this subject to the fullest. I'm going to tell the truth about it, and you can agree or disagree on it. But you know, I'm going to tell the truth about it, and I'm going to entertain it. And that, and as long as I do that, I did my job. You know, I did my job. You know, I'm putting us back in the picture, putting our people back in the picture. You know, and when I entertain it, I'm going to tell the truth about it. You know, and that's that. And I want to say peace to Brother Shaka, peace to Afro Asiatic. You know,
Peace,
it's
brother.
been a good
One.
build. Yes, and Hotel.
Peace, Brother Radio One. Hotep to you. Now, Brother Asiatic Lion, feel free to make your closing remarks.
Yeah, peace, brother Radio One. Peace, brother Shaka. You know, always an honor. You know, good to hear, build with you brothers. You know, look forward to, you know, build in the future. You know, definitely on that Bubas Dynasty one day Radio One. Peace, brother Shaka.
Oh yes, indeed.
All right, brothers. Thank you very much for calling in. Thank you for giving your insight. Whether you agree or disagree, it's always all good. No drama. So, brothers and sisters, senu hena senut. Stay safe, stay healthy, and if I'm allowed to, by E to E, hena necheru or necheru E, and I would definitely holler back at you. Hotep.
Hotel. Hotel.
Now, for the record, for those who don't know, I'm giving medical nature classes. And here, that's the flyer. Okay? So, those who are interested, feel free to holler at me. If you're not interested, it's cool. But I recommend that everybody who has not yet seen the video Kemet and Ma'at before Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, then watch it. It has about 300,000 views and really deserves to have a lot more.
I just want to let everyone know who's listening in now and who's going to listen to this stream in the future. I just had my first Meta Nature class by Brother Shaka today, and I've had other Meta Nature lessons by other teachers, and I can tell you right now, the brother is the best in the game. He is that was one of the best classes I've ever had, ever. So if you're interested in learning the Meta Nature, if you're interested in getting the basics of it, Brother Shaka is an awesome teacher. Get with him, and it's extremely affordable. This brother is giving us his time and his skills, and he's basically giving it away. I mean, I just consider it a donation. You know what I'm saying? So if anybody is interested in learning the Meta Nature, get with this brother right here. He's an awesome, awesome, awesome teacher. And I'll end with that.
Hotep Senu, Hena Senut. This is Julie, also known as Servant of Yah, and I'm currently taking the Medu Neture classes with Brother Shaka, and it has been an amazing experience. Only 2 lessons so far, and I feel like I've been taking the classes for months, just with the how in depth he goes into the vocabulary words, the construction of the language, the grammar. It's been immeasurable, the experience. And one thing that comes across, hands down, is his extreme passion for teaching this to anyone who is willing to learn and has an interest in learning. So I highly suggest, if you are interested, even a minimal interest, that you subscribe to the classes with Brother Shaka. It's such a nominal amount for how much you get. I know, like, our last class was over 2.5 hours. It felt like 2 minutes, but because that's how involved you are in what he's teaching and how he teaches and how compassionate he is about what he teaches. Also with sharing materials free of charge, no question, no doubt. It's just what he does. He doesn't have to, but he does. And so I just wanted to give a short testimonial about the class and the effectiveness of the class. And all of that is attested to how studied Brother Shaka is. So I highly recommend anyone with a minimal interest that you do sign up for the Medu Neture class. Hotep.
Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, which is Ma'at Forever. Don't forget to watch the video entitled Kemet and Ma'at. Don't forget to share Kemet and Ma'at on my channel on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, or other social media that you use. Email, text messages, you name it. Those who wish to donate can do so on paypal.me/ma'atforever.